As we move forever forward into what definitely probably could seem like a no-deal Brexit, by the time this video could come out, we may already know what type of Brexit we're getting, so this intro may be completely useless. But it is worth, I really think, going over the fact, how on earth did we get to this point? Because this truly does raise so many questions. It really does. And, where this blame really lies is, I think, on a lot of people. There isn't just really one person you can really blame for the situation we've put ourselves in. But I think this article here that we're going to go through now, I think does a really good job of explaining just how we got here. And I always think it's worth remembering of the point where we started at, with the Leave campaign saying that we can remain in the single market and customs union, to where we are now, which is a no-deal Brexit, potentially. So, let's just go over this and remind ourselves of once where we started and to now where we've ended up. So, this comes from The Guardian, and the title of the article is, "As we close in on a Brexit that pleases nobody, how did we end up here?" Are we there yet? Very nearly, it seems. A deal is there for the taking, and however scrawny it may be, a deal is very difficult to a no deal in economic, political, and diplomatic terms. Yet, the fact remains that our choice is between something skinny and not at all, which, if nothing else, raises the question, how the hell did we arrive here? I think, trust me, this is going to be the subject of many political books throughout the coming years. I can guarantee you there's going to be books aplenty on this topic and subject. So anyway, it continues. For some, the answer is simple: Tory Brexiteers. The European research group Ultras dragging Theresa May kicking and screaming into backing a kind of Brexit only they wanted. When she failed to deliver it, she was summarily defenestrated by her loyal colleagues, Steve Barker and co., who have provided us with the Brexit version of the devil's alternative. No deal unless it confirms with their version of Brexit to ideological purity. But Brexit ideological purity has always been a minority interest. In the parliaments that gave us the referendum and tried to work it out what it actually meant, only 80 MPs actually backed that kind of outcome we are now confronted with. What is more, public opinion never came out in favour of this kind of Brexit. Yes, they voted to leave, and the official Leave campaign spoke of taking back control, but it is a tedious mandate at best. The campaign, after all, quite deliberately avoided telling the public what leaving would look like. Subsequent polling and deliberative inquiries, moreover, have shown that, and they have offered a majority of public flavours something of a far softer view of what is now on offer. Taking back control into period immediately after the referendum, few people could have actually imagined what the tortuous subsequent journey would actually end in. Many set out red lines at the party conference and in her Plan for Britain speech at Lancaster House that some see as the setting destination equivocally towards a hard Brexit. But she wanted a bespoke arrangement between the UK and the EU. Between 2016 and 18, May went on something of a journey. From Lancaster House to Chequers, her approach to Brexit softened significantly, albeit that the end product was still a Brexit that eschewed the customs union and the single market. By Chequers, she was proposing that the UK remain part of the single market for goods through a common rulebook, and her customs backstop meant that the starting point for a future relationship would be an enduring customs relationship until technology came to the rescue. The reason her backbenchers would not pass her deal. Moreover, en route, she called the effectively she called and effectively lost an election. To claim the outcome of Brexit was set in stone in May or even in October of 2016 at the Tory conference or January of 2017 at Lancaster House is to forget just how powerless May actually was and how frequently she was defeated after the electoral debacle. It is here that things get really interesting. Not because it is the point that the dynamics of Brexit absolution took over, just at the moment when the Prime Minister was too weak to force her vision of Brexit on Parliament or even the country. Those suggesting some kind of compromise were shouted and voted down as debate polarised. And as the People's Vote campaign got underway, so the Brexiteers increasingly became obsessed with Brexit purity. Rather than train their fire on each other, both camps focused their ire on compromises. In the middle, the temperature was raised so it became more difficult for those seeking a compromise to argue, let alone even vote in favour of one. As Peter Mandelson has pointed out, it's impossible to have and argue in favour of a referendum and then thereby weaken the case for a softer form of Brexit and not regret it. But his acceptance of the link between the two is instructive. Clearly, the state of our politics did not help. Plenty of Conservatives would have considered working closely with the Parliamentary Labour Party had their leader not been Jeremy Corbyn. Equally, plenty of Labour MPs who backed Brexit wanted a deal but could have backed the May deal but were concerned about the optics of backing a Conservative Prime Minister who might otherwise have fallen. The latter logic in particular feels partly faulty, yes, but there was peer pressure from constituency Labour parties, and yes, once it looked as if May could fall, propping her up would have taken a lot of explaining. But with May vulnerable, it was clear that her successors and the views would be nearer to those of the Steve Barker and Dominic Grieve, and consequently, the best way for guaranteeing a softer Brexit was to pass the May deal, with its legally binding backstop, and added many of the caveats onto the accompanying legislation, including if a majority could be mustered for another referendum, and keep Parliament on some sort of life support until a future relationship was settled. The short-term expectancy ultimately triumphed, though. Of course, and there is no guarantee that even had enough Labour MPs supported the May deal to get it over the line, they would not enabled the creation of the kind of stable parliamentary majority to actually get Brexit done, to coin a phrase. And yet, what was the alternative? What we left with is a Brexit that pleases next to no one. Not the DUP, which is stuck with the GB Northern Ireland border it hates. Not the ERG Tories, not to mention those who used to be in the Parliament and are no longer in the Parliament because they voiced their concerns. Not Labour MPs, who might be whipped through division lobbies to support a Brexit deal that they can't abide. The only grouping that may have lost the immediate battle but won the war is the SNP. If a hard Brexit opens a path for IndyRef 2 and Scott 6, that's weird, but the hard Brexit raises the price it will have to pay for this. Nothing is inevitable until it happens, opined the historian A.G.P. Taylor. The kind of Brexit we now face was not an inevitable outcome of the referendum, or even the conference speech of 2016, or of Lancaster House. To claim it was to deny agency to a huge number of participants in the Brexit saga. Rather, it was the outcome of many factors. Most important of all, it is the result from the nature of our politics, the adversarial intolerance of compromise and pushing politicians to more extreme positions than the voters who actually put them there. That, above all, is a cause for concern. And that really is where we are. I mean, it's under no illusions that the Parliamentary Conservative Party has gone from being somewhat of a middle of the road, although be it right-leaning party under David Cameron, to now under Boris Johnson, to what you could very well easily argue is probably, if not right, just as Margaret Thatcher's government was back in the 80s, in some cases it may be even be more right on certain subjects, which does raise huge concerns, which we are going to have to worry about definitely in the future, when certainly a lot of these regulations that protect us, especially on workers' rights, definitely are going to come under attack. So, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, just how we got here. And I think that article is 100% right. It's not just one person or even one group's fault. It is a myriad of factors. And I do think that our party politics and the way that our politics is done, the idea that you just cannot compromise at all, is ridiculous. This is what I've often said: we need to get to the European way of doing things, where parties do compromise and they do come to decisions, because you can see this very attitude being reflected in the Brexit negotiations. You will accept our demands or else we'll stay negotiating, says the British government, until we get what we want. But there you go. So yeah, I think that sums everything up, really, how we got here. But anyway, thank you for watching. As always, please do hit that like and share button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link. And thank you very much to the people who support me on those channels. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.